I'm a lawyer, which means I'm always busy, always on the move. Late nights at the office, weekend business trips. My life's a never-ending cycle of work and travel. It's what I signed up for, but lately, something's been off at home. My wife, Sarah, has seemed distant, like she's there but not really there. We've been married for 12 years, and I know her well enough to sense when something's wrong. But with 2 young kids, a house to run, and my demanding job, I figured maybe she was just tired, maybe a little overwhelmed. But that nagging feeling in the back of my mind wouldn't go away. So I decided to do something about it. I'd been on the road for a week and was supposed to come back late Friday night. Instead, I wrapped up my meetings early, caught an earlier flight, and headed home a day ahead of schedule. I wanted to surprise her, give her a break from the kids, and maybe spark that old connection we used to have. On the drive back, I thought about how much she deserved a night off. I'd pick up the kids, drop them at my parents' place for the weekend, and come home with a bottle of her favorite wine. We'd have the whole house to ourselves. It had been too long since we'd had a night like that. Just the two of us, no interruptions, no responsibilities. Maybe that's what we needed to get back on track. I picked up the kids from school, and they were excited, talking about seeing Grandma and Grandpa. My parents live about an hour and a half away. "You're going to love this, Sarah," I muttered to myself, imagining her smile. I knew how much she missed the spontaneity we used to have before life got so predictable. After dropping the kids off and exchanging pleasantries with my folks, I headed back home, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. This was going to be good for us. It had to be. As I turned the corner onto our street, the first thing I noticed was the truck. It was an old, beat-up pickup, the kind you see on construction sites, covered in dust with tools thrown haphazardly in the back. It wasn't the kind of vehicle you'd expect to see in our neighborhood, let alone in my driveway. My heart skipped a beat. I slowed the car, squinting at the license plate, but it wasn't familiar. The hell is this? I thought, my mind racing through possibilities. Maybe a contractor? But I hadn't hired anyone, and Sarah hadn't mentioned any work being done around the house. I pulled up behind the truck and parked on the street in front of the neighbor's house. As I walked toward the house, my footsteps felt heavier than usual, like I was walking through quicksand. I glanced around, half expecting someone to come out and explain why their truck was parked in my driveway, but the street was eerily quiet. As I reached the front door, I noticed something else. The truck's driver's side window was down, and inside, there was a crumpled-up fast food bag and a half-empty bottle of beer in the cup holder. Whoever this guy was, he didn't care much about appearances, or he didn't plan on staying long. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. Didn't make any sounds. I took a few more steps, my eyes scanning the living room. Everything looked normal. Her shoes by the door, the kids' toys scattered around, the faint smell of dinner from earlier that night. But something wasn't right. I heard a noise from upstairs, a low, muffled voice. A man's voice. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound of my own blood rushing in my ears was deafening. I strained to hear more, but the voices had stopped. Maybe I imagined it, I thought, but I knew better. Every instinct I had was screaming at me, telling me to turn around and leave, but I couldn't. I had to know. I took a deep breath and started up the stairs. I heard it again, Sarah's voice, low and breathy, followed by a man's laugh. That laugh hit me like a slap in the face. It was too familiar, too casual. My stomach twisted into a knot as I realized what was happening. Someone was in my house, in my bedroom, with my wife. And that someone wasn't me. Part of me wanted to charge up those stairs, kick open the door, and confront them right then and there. But something else took over, cold, calculated instinct. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling as I opened the camera app. I walked slowly toward the base of the stairs, every step feeling like I was wading through quicksand. I could hear them more clearly now, the bed creaking with their movements, the unmistakable sounds of skin on skin. I felt like I was on autopilot, disconnected from the reality of the situation. All I could think was that I needed proof. I needed to see this for what it was, no matter how much it would tear me apart. I pressed record. The red light blinked on the screen as I pointed the camera toward the top of the stairs. my hand shaking so badly I had to use both hands to steady it. I just stood there, listening, recording their every sickening move. My mind was a blur, a chaotic mess of emotions I couldn't even begin to untangle. How could she do this? Why? What did I do wrong? But no answers came, just more questions, more pain, more anger. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I ended the recording and pocketed the phone, my body trembling with a mix of rage and devastation. I turned on my heel and left the house as quietly as I had entered, my mind reeling with what I had just witnessed. My world had just crumbled, and I had no idea what to do next. I drove aimlessly, my mind a storm of confusion and pain. The images from the video I just recorded played on a loop in my head, taunting me with every detail. How could this be real? How could Sarah do this to me, to us? Divorce? But what about the kids? They adored their mother, and despite everything, I still loved her. Or at least I thought I did. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I hesitated for a moment, then pressed play. The sounds hit me first, making my stomach churn. Her laugh, the way she whispered his name, the low groans from that bastard. Everything was burned into my brain. I watched them together over and over again, trying to make sense of it. But the more I watched, the less sense it made. Why him? Why now? Was this something I'd missed all along? I found myself hitting replay, again and again, like some masochistic ritual. Each time I hoped it would get easier, that I'd grow numb to it. But it never did. Every time I watched, it felt like a fresh wound, tearing open my heart all over again. As the days passed, I became obsessed, the video becoming a twisted comfort, a reminder that I wasn't imagining this nightmare. But it was also destroying me piece by piece. The more I watched, the more lost I felt, torn between my love for Sarah and the betrayal that had shattered our life together. I knew I had to make a decision now. One night, as I sat in the dark, staring at the video on my phone for what felt like the 100th time, a twisted thought began to creep into my mind. I was sad, angry, and lost. But what if I could turn this pain into something else? Something that could hurt her as much as she hurt me, or better yet, something that could make me some money? I laughed at the absurdity of the idea at first, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. She'd already betrayed me, destroyed our marriage. Why shouldn't I get something out of it? My hands shook with a mix of nerves and excitement as I downloaded a video app that I know a lot of people upload their own tapes onto, setting up an anonymous account. I uploaded the video, carefully editing out anything that might reveal our identities. The rush of adrenaline as I clicked publish was unlike anything I'd felt in a long time. It was wrong, so wrong, but it also felt like taking back a little bit of control. I didn't expect much, maybe a few views, a handful of subscribers, but when I checked the account the next morning, my jaw nearly hit the floor. The video was a hit. The money started rolling in, more than I made in a week at the firm. Couldn't believe it. I was thrilled. I didn't know if it was the money or the feeling of power it gave me, but for the first time since I'd walked in on Sarah and that guy, I felt something other than pain. Whatever it was, I was hooked. I went all in. I bought a set of high-end cameras, discreetly placing them around the house, each one hidden in plain sight. I knew Sarah would never notice. She was too caught up in whatever twisted game she was playing. I started traveling more, telling her it was work, but in reality, I was just staying at a hotel a few miles away, close enough to keep tabs on her but far enough to make her think I was really gone. And she started asking that guy over our house more and more often. Soon, I have videos of them in our bedroom, the bathtub, and even on the kitchen counter. I spent most of my time in that hotel room, editing the footage, adding it to the growing collection on my OnlyFans page. I was making more money than I ever thought possible, and it was addictive. Each new video brought in more subscribers, more cash, and more of that twisted sense of satisfaction. As the money piled up, I found myself playing a different role, a doting husband who suddenly had all the time in the world for his wife. I started surprising Sarah with gifts, things she'd never asked for but always wanted: jewelry, designer clothes, weekend getaways. It was like I was making up for all the times I'd been absent, all the anniversaries I'd missed, all the times I'd put my career before her. At first, she seemed suspicious, but that quickly gave way to something else. Guilt. I could see it in the way her eyes softened when I handed her a new piece of jewelry, or how she'd hesitate before taking the credit card to go on a shopping spree. She began to act differently, more attentive, more loving, as if she was trying to make up for what she'd done. She'd cook my favorite meals, surprise me with little notes in my briefcase, and even initiated conversations about our future, something she hadn't done in years. There was a certain sadness in her eyes that hadn't been there before, a kind of regret that seemed to weigh on her every time she looked at me. She'd wrap her arms around me a little tighter, hold my hand a little longer, and in those moments I could almost believe she was sorry, that she wished she could take it all back. But the truth was, she hadn't stopped. Not yet. My own guilt gnawed at me with every passing day. I'd see her trying to be the perfect wife, showering me with affection, and it only made my own betrayal feel more intense. I had exploited her mistakes, turning our private pain into profit, and every time I saw her struggling to make amends, the shame of what I had done burned even deeper. There were moments when I would catch her gazing out the window, lost in thought, and I could see the internal struggle written across her face. She was torn between her remorse for her actions and the ongoing affair she could not seem to let go of. I could almost hear her internal battle, the whispers of guilt and temptation wrestling for control. One evening, after we had just finished one of those quiet dinners, Sarah sat down next to me on the couch. There was something different about her tonight. Her usual guilt-ridden demeanor had given way to something more intense, almost desperate. She hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice trembling. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I've been so wrong. I've been unfaithful to you, and I can't live with the guilt any longer. You deserve so much better than this." Hearing her say those words out loud, seeing the pain on her face, was like a punch to the gut. I had wanted this moment, wanted her to confess, but now that it was happening, it felt like everything was crumbling around me. But I couldn't let her take all the blame, not when I knew what I'd done. The words caught in my throat, and for a moment, I thought about keeping my secret hidden. But the guilt, the shame, it was too much. "There's something you need to know too," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've known about your affair, Sarah. I've known for a while, but I didn't confront you. Instead, I did something terrible." My heart pounded in my chest as I forced myself to continue. "I recorded you, and I uploaded the videos online." Sarah's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, she just stared at me, trying to process what I had said. Then, as the realization set in, her expression shifted to one of horror and betrayal. You did what?" she asked, her voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," I stammered, guilt crashing over me like a tidal wave. "I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was to hurt you, to get back at you. But it got out of control. I didn't expect it to go this far." Her face turned pale, and she looked at me like she didn't even know who I was anymore. She stood up, backing away from me like I was a stranger. "I knew what I did was wrong, but this is on a whole different level. You've humiliated me in a way I can't even comprehend." Tears streamed down her face, and I could see the hurt and anger in her eyes, but beneath that, there was something else, an overwhelming sense of loss. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know if we can come back from this." I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of her words pressing down on me. "Sarah, I understand," I said softly. "I know I've messed up. I know we're both to blame. But I want to try. I want to find a way back, if there is one." Sarah shook her head, her eyes darting away as she wiped her tears. "How do we even start? Everything feels broken beyond repair." "We start by being honest," I said, my voice trembling. "We face everything we've done, no matter how painful, and we work on rebuilding trust if that's even possible." There was a long silence between us. The room felt heavy, charged with the emotional weight of our conversation. Sarah's shoulders sagged as she let out a long, shuddering sigh. "I've been thinking a lot," Sarah said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. about why I did what I did. It wasn't just about the excitement. I felt neglected, unimportant. And then I got caught up in something that just spiraled out of control. I nodded, understanding the underlying pain behind her words. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. I thought I was doing everything right by working hard and providing for our family. But I was missing what really mattered: being present, being a partner. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of regret and confusion. I've been trying to make it up to you, but I know now that it's not just about gifts. It's about trust, and I don't know if we can ever get that back. I've been feeling guilty too, I admitted. I've been watching the videos, feeling like I was exacting some sort of revenge. But in the process, I've lost sight of what's really important: our family, our future. The money, the control. It all seemed to distract me from the pain I was causing and experiencing. We both fell silent, the weight of our confessions hanging in the air. It was a painful truth, but it was a step toward facing our reality. "I'm so sorry," Sarah said, her voice breaking again. "I wish I could undo everything. I never meant to hurt you like this. I was selfish." "I'm sorry too," I said, reaching out to take her hand. We agreed to take some time apart. I moved into a small apartment nearby, and Sarah stayed in the house with the kids. One night, sitting alone in my small, stark apartment, I made up my mind to delete all the videos. It was a symbolic gesture, but it felt right. I removed everything from my computer, erased the files from the cloud, and even sent a sizable donation to a charity dedicated to helping families in crisis. It was a way to start over, to try and make something positive come out of the mess I had created. When I met with Sarah to discuss the next steps, I could see the relief in her eyes. "I've deleted everything," I told her. "All the videos. And I donated the money to charity." Her expression softened, a mix of surprise and gratitude. "That means a lot. It was something I needed to do for myself," I said. "I wanted to let go of the anger and the hurt. It was never about the money. It was about trying to find some semblance of control in a situation where I felt powerless." We continued to meet regularly, discussing our feelings and what we wanted for our future. The journey of healing was slow, filled with moments of doubt and frustration. But there were also moments of hope, small victories where we found ourselves laughing together or sharing a genuine conversation. "Do you think we're making progress?" Sarah asked one evening as we sat in the park, watching our kids play. "I do," I replied. She nodded, looking thoughtful. I squeezed her hand gently. "There's a lot of work ahead, and it won't be easy, but I'm committed to trying. We're both committed to trying." And so we continued our journey one day at a time. We sought professional help and leaned on each other for support. The path wasn't clear, and the end wasn't in sight. But there was hope, a hope that we could rebuild what we had lost and find a way back to each other. The end. Thanks for listening to the story. Tell us in the comments how you feel about it.